Why did this happen to me? Why did my life unfold the way it did, or the way it has up to this point? There's lots of ways that sort of anger or sort of rage, actually, can manifest. We want life to explain itself. We want God to explain himself. We want the people in our past to explain themselves. And like I said, we can feel sort of victimized by your own suffering that you carry with you. But there's something that's what I've seen is a universal component that will dictate whether you will be able to heal from your suffering or not. And believe me, I've watched people. I've been in this unique position in many ways to watch many, many people that have experienced all kinds of suffering. Some of it just horrendous levels of suffering and sorrow, abuse, and all the rest. And I've seen people spin and spin and spin and spin with it. And I've seen people heal from the most incredible backgrounds of suffering and violence. And what I've seen, one of the commonalities that goes with any kind of healing, any kind of psychological, emotional healing, is you usually start out with some sort of resistance. There's your experience. Most negative emotions are actually forms of resistance. Sorrow, depression, anger, resentment, conflict. They're actually kind of forms, they're different forms that resistance and anger can take. Right? So for one person, they might be sort of in a rage all the time. So their hurt gets projected outward. And so they're raging, they're upset all the time with everything and everybody around them. Somebody else, their rage gets inverted. And so they turn it into themselves. And so they get depressed. And all that upset and rage gets internalized. And so in essence, they're sort of attacking themselves all the time. So there's different ways that this plays out. But if you can see the surface emotion, whatever the surface emotion is, and so many of the surface emotions are forms of resisting. And of course you resist because you're not feeling good, because you're unhappy. So of course you resist being unhappy. But underneath unhappiness, or underneath anger, underneath rage, underneath shame, underneath these big, boisterous, dominating kind of emotions is a kind of grief. A kind of grief. And often we get trapped in the exterior emotions, as painful as they can be, because we're not really willing to experience the grief underneath them. And underneath the grief is when you grieve for something, you grieve for it because you care about it, or you love it. If you didn't love something, you wouldn't grieve for it. You wouldn't grieve over the loss of something. So if you say somebody passes away or dies, if you didn't love them, you're not going to grieve much. We see people, hear about people dying all the time. It can be on the news, it can be in the newspaper, it can be somebody you know or somebody you hear about. But when you tend to love somebody, then there's almost always some element of grief. So we grieve for what we love. This is a really important point that I'm bringing up when it comes to the ability to heal. Because the ability to heal doesn't come from your resistance. It doesn't come from your upset. It doesn't come from your rage. It doesn't come from your resistance. It doesn't come from these sort of surface, powerful, but basically surface masking emotions. It doesn't come from blame. You'll never get healing that arises out of blame. Right? But underneath these emotions, there's always something softer that they're kind of concealing. They're protecting. And often there is an element of grief underneath all the rage, underneath the resentment, underneath the blame. And part of the grief is the feeling that you've lost something, or that something's been taken away from you, that you've lost something really essential about yourself. You've lost your well-being, you lost your happiness, you lost your confidence. And that grief, as I say, you can only grieve for something that you care about. You can only grieve for something that you love. So if you grieve about losing a part of yourself or feeling like you lost something about yourself, then there must be love there. There must be love underneath it all. Love for something inside of you, or caring. There's that sense of caring for yourself. In other words, these are words for a kind of tenderness, that you actually care about yourself. You actually love yourself. Love yourself in a sense of there's compassion there. As I said, all grief comes from love, from caring, from compassion. And what I've seen over interacting with thousands and thousands and thousands of people and watching their own growth is that until you can connect, and you're willing to connect with the caring inside, with the fact that you do care about yourself, you do love something about yourself, even if you love what you imagined that you've lost. But when you can connect with that kind of love or that kind of caring or compassion, that's the place that healing can begin. And as long as you stay lost in the surface emotions and the surface questions and stories that revolve around, you know what I mean, those, why did this happen to me? Why did God do this? Why is life the way it is? And underneath those questions is sort of a cauldron of resentment and upset that life is the way it is, And, you could say some of that's understandable given the life that some people end up leading. But as long as you stay in these exterior forms of emotion and you're unwilling to experience the more tender parts of the emotions, the more vulnerable parts, the more quiet parts, the more loving and caring parts that actually... Because look, if you didn't love yourself in a deep way, if you didn't care about yourself, you wouldn't be upset about what happened in your life if you didn't care. That's a strange thing to say, because what it means is, if you have rage about something that happened in your life, the reason you have rage is because you care. Not just because you're upset about what happened, but because you actually care about yourself. You care about your humanity. You love a part of your humanity. When you can tap into that, when you're ready to tap into that, when you're willing to tap into that feeling inside, any moment you kind of tap into it, the tumultuous sort of thunderstorm of emotion starts to quiet because you're tapping into something. At first, it may be difficult to tap into it because it's cutting very close within you. You're coming back into a sort of intimate connection with your own humanity. But until you start to come back into an intimate connection with your humanity, even if that means you're intimately connecting with your own sorrow, again, because to intimately connect with your sorrow, you're only sorrowful about something that matters to you, something that you love or care about. So, because a lot of what drives sort of the negative emotional experiences in life isn't just their origination point, where they got started often early in life, but what keeps this sort of thunderball rolling is getting lost and staying lost in the big, large, heavy, dense, concealing emotions. Those emotions which are concealing the love that you have for yourself. Because again, if you didn't have any love for yourself or for your humanity, you wouldn't be feeling what you're feeling. It wouldn't matter to you. But it does matter. The pain is a proof that it does matter. So it's really important to know that you can only start to really heal when you touch upon that deeper emotional center. It's a more tender place, it's a more vulnerable place, it's definitely a more loving place. And as long as you stay lost in the outside, then you can utilize any teaching, you can go to any therapist, you can feel yourself with healing modalities, but if you're never really willing, because what it is, it's a choice. If you're never willing to begin to choose to go to the place in you that really cares, that realizes that so much of what you're experiencing is because you're experiencing it because you really care about yourself. There's a grief. You don't only have grief over feeling like you lost something that you loved. It's not just loss that causes grief, it's losing what you love. If you can reconnect with the love, with your caring, then you've begun to connect with the energy that heals. And this is the difference between people that heal and people who never heal. If you never allow yourself to connect with the inner sense of caring and love, then you can't heal. You literally can't heal, no matter what you do. You'll just go in circles and circles and circles and circles and circles. Or what the therapy, what the spirituality, what it is you're doing. But when you start to choose and allow yourself to touch in to those deeper places of your being where you do care and you do love, then all of the healing modalities look very, very different. You're approaching them from a totally different point of view. So even though I can't, I'm not sitting here this evening and telling anybody who's written in, this is how to solve your problem, or I know how to solve your problem, because the truth is, I don't know how to solve your problem. I don't know how to solve anybody's problem. Only you know how to solve your problem in the end. You can be helped for sure. For sure. And I encourage anybody that's in a deep state of sorrow to reach out, to find something that really speaks to them and really works for them. But know before you even reach out that if you're unwilling or not ready to go deeper, to touch into your own caring, the caring that's underneath the upset or the depression or the rage or the blame or the judgment, that there's actually a kind of love underneath all that. Until you're willing to connect into that, then a healing can't happen. It literally can't happen. And when you are willing to begin to touch into that, then healing becomes, the doors all of a sudden open and they become very, very possible. Right? Because all healing begins from a place of compassion and caring and love. That's the place where all forms of healing happen. And if you're addressing your own experience from the standpoint of only what you want to get rid of, I don't want to feel this and I don't want to feel that, and who's to blame for how I upset, and why did God set it up this way, and why does the world work this way, and all these things that seem very rational, like very rational questions. But they're a way of staying lost. They're a way of avoiding something deeper. You're only upset because you really do care about yourself. And all healing has to come from caring, from compassion, from love. That's the only place it can come from. So you have to be willing to begin to open to that, to admit it, to access it. Otherwise, you'll reach out in 100 different ways for healing, but you'll never seem to be able to find it. Because the healing doesn't lie outside of you. It's not in the spiritual teacher. The healing isn't in the therapist. Maybe the teaching can help you. I hope it can. Maybe a therapist can help you. If you need one, I hope they can. But they can't actually do anything. They can't actually help until you're willing to touch into the compassionate place in yourself. Because all they can do is assist healing. That's all I can do is assist healing.